Now, why would you want to do that?
Because you won't give me a quarter not to.
Top of the line. Made of mahogany, has silk line. A downside, then the devil comes, right? And every thought, every evil thought, everything that bothered you, every childhood memory, everything anyone said to you comes up.
At 75, Ernest Lee Thomas is speaking out about some awful rumors. Why did he wait so long to talk? What are these awful rumors, and are they true? What made him decide to confirm them now? Let's take a look at what Ernest has to say about these awful rumors.
Mama, this whole story could make a great little movie.
Yeah, and I'd like to...
Ernest Lee Thomas is best known for playing Roger Raj Thomas on the hit 1970s sitcom, What's Happening? His bright smile and charming personality made him a favorite on TV. Fans loved his fun character, and he became a household name. Born in Gary, Indiana, but his story starts before that. His mother was very young when she had his sister, only 16 years old. Life was hard for her, and she was married to a man named Robert Thomas, who wasn't faithful to her. To get back at him, she had an affair with another man, William Barry, and Ernest was the result of that relationship. When Ernest's mom found out she was pregnant again, she didn't want to go through childbirth. She even tried to abort him using a coat hanger, which was something people sadly resorted to back then because they didn't have access to safe medical options. Ernest's grandmother stopped her just in time and made sure he was born. Years later, Ernest asked his mom if it was true, and she admitted it, saying she just didn't want to face the pain of childbirth again.
Well, it wasn't my family is Baptist. My social worker was Pentecostal, and because of her, I joined the Pentecostal faith. But my folks were just Baptist. But
growing up, life wasn't easy for Ernest. His family was poor and on welfare. He wore hand-me-down clothes and tight shoes his mother got from the family she worked for. Kids at school teased him for being poor and for talking white, even though he was just imitating his black teachers. They bullied him daily, taking his lunch money and beating him up. Ernest found comfort in his faith.
Having to tell my pastor, who took me in at 12 like a father figure, now I am telling him the very thing that they told us, not be in the world, but not of the world. No movies, no dances, no proms. You can't look at a woman, anything like that is lust.
He grew up deeply connected to the church and believed that God had a plan for him. That faith kept him going, even when things got tough. Summers were especially hard for Ernest because his family would visit the South. This was during a time when segregation and racism were strong. Ernest's grandmother warned him to always say yes, sir, and no, sir, to white people, even if they were children. She showed him a photo of Emmett Till, a black boy brutally killed for talking to a white woman, as a warning of what could happen if he didn't follow the rules.
In your book, you described yourself as a loner, incredibly shy, and a nerd, and the least likely person to become an actor. You initially wanted to be a social worker, and you got a degree in sociology and psychology.
Ernest Thomas didn't plan on becoming an actor. His goal was to be a social worker, but life had a different plan for him. While taking an acting class in college, he got an A and some surprising advice. His teacher told him, "You could do this for a living." Ernest still wasn't convinced. Even when he performed in a school play, Romeo and Juliet, and impressed everyone with his role as Prince Aeschylus, he thought acting was just a hobby. Ernest graduated from Indiana State University with a degree in sociology and psychology. He even started working on his master's degree. But the acting bug bit him hard. Encouraged by a friend, he auditioned for the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York and got in.
So he told me, "Ernie, you could do whatever they do on the TV and film. You're an actor, man." So I took a course, got an A in it.
This wasn't just any acting school. It was one of the best. Big names like Robert Redford and Danny DeVito studied there. At the Academy, Ernest started to shine. He performed in plays and even got picked for a professional production while still a student. This wasn't normal. Students didn't usually get such opportunities. But Ernest's talent stood out, and he earned great reviews. After finishing school, Ernest moved to Los Angeles to pursue TV acting. His family didn't understand theater, but his grandmother loved TV and supported his dreams. Ernest believed his journey was guided by divine direction. He wanted to play roles that inspired others, like Preacher Jackson in Cooley High. In a twist of fate, Ernest landed an audition for a new show based on Cooley High. At first, the project didn't work out. ABC said the original pilot wasn't funny enough and scrapped it. Ernest felt like a failure. But soon after, the network decided to rework the show, keeping Ernest and recasting the rest of the actors. That's how What's Happening was born. Ernest played Roger Raj Thomas, a high schooler full of charm and humor. Even though he was 25, his slim build and youthful looks made him perfect for the role. The show became a hit, and Ernest Thomas became a household name. Interestingly, Thomas got the chance to audition for What's Happening while he was working as a guest actor on another hit show, The Jeffersons. He met Mary White, the agent of actress Isabel Sanford, who played Louise Jefferson. White saw Thomas's talent and told him about a new show that she thought he'd be perfect for. That show was Cooley High, which later became What's Happening. Thomas told his own agent about it, and while there was some initial tension, he got an audition.
Mama, this whole story could make a great little movie.
Yeah. And I'd like to...
Thomas faced a lot of competition for the role of Raj. He later shared that over 200 actors auditioned for the part. He also revealed that some of his friends were upset when he landed the role because they wanted it too. But he stayed focused and believed that getting the role was part of a higher plan, thanks to his faith and prayers. When Thomas got the role of Raj, he was only 26 years old. Playing a teenager at that age was not easy, but he did it so well that audiences fell in love with his character. The show became an instant hit, and it ran for 3 years. During that time, Ernest Thomas enjoyed the spotlight. The success brought him not just fame, but also money, which allowed him to live a luxurious lifestyle for a while. He enjoyed the perks of fame. He was invited to big parties, met other famous people, and had a lot of money. Life seemed great at that time.
Here you are, you got a hit show, you got a house in Malibu, you're partying, celebrities are coming over, and then in 1979, the show gets canceled.
But at just 26 years old, Ernest found himself unable to handle the weight of it all. Fame came with a lot of pressure, and when What's Happening ended, things started to fall apart. Imagine waking up one day as a star, living the dream life, and the next day, everything starts to disappear. That's exactly what happened to Ernest. He found out that the show was canceled in a surprising way. He didn't get the news from anyone important. Instead, he heard about it from a newsstand worker. This news was a big blow to him, and it changed his life.
And now you're canceled.
Yeah.
And you went into a depression over that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Major depression.
So what led to the cancellation of What's Happening? The show was doing great at first, but as time went on, the actors started to want more money. Fred Berry, who played Rerun, felt it was time to ask for a raise. Soon Ernest joined him, wanting more money too. After I had left the show, Alan Rafkin noted in his book, there was a big contract dispute, and I was told that Fred was the instigator behind the trouble that followed. Eventually, the producers simply had enough of the boys' antics, and they closed the series down. But Thomas notes that there's a mystery over that. I remember distinctly that they had a meeting and wanted the entire cast to meet with all of the producers. And they said, Fred Berry tells us that you think we're racist, so we don't want you working for racists, and we're going to cancel the show. That's what I remember. Fred was very happy, even at that meeting. He didn't take it back and say, no, they really didn't say it. I was the one who said it. He said, no, you all said it. So they thought he really was telling the truth. Fred did apologize for all of that stuff toward the end of his life, says Thomas. Even when he passed away, people didn't want me to go to the funeral. There are people who are still upset with me for going to his funeral. But to me, there's a thing called forgiveness. When someone asks you for forgiveness, there's no reason to keep something going. I went to the funeral because he expressed that he was sorry. For Ernest, losing his job on the show was devastating. He was already feeling the pressure of fame, and the cancellation of What's Happening pushed him into a dark place. He struggled with depression, and to cope, he turned to drugs and alcohol. His choices became unhealthy. From alcohol to weed, cocaine, and even crack, Ernest went down a dangerous path.
Yeah, major depression, more drugs, because Coke, I haven't introduced to Coke at that time, and Remy Martin. So those were the go-to, and of course weed, all of it,
Well, and crack.
Yeah, which came in the 80s, though. Yeah.
Ernest openly shared his struggles with drugs. In an interview with Vlad TV, Ernest explained how drugs took over his life, but also how he found his way back to a better place. Ernest went through a tough time in his life when he found out something that led him into depression. This depression pushed him into using drugs. He tried many dangerous substances, including cocaine, crack, and weed. At first, he felt a high that seemed amazing. He described it as feeling like ecstasy, like everything was perfect. But this feeling didn't last. The drugs took a toll on him, and he soon felt overwhelmed with bad thoughts, memories from his childhood, and feelings of worthlessness.
A downside, then the devil comes, right? And every thought, every evil thought, everything that bothered you, every childhood memory, everything anyone said to you comes up.
At first, Ernest tried to control his drug use, but over time, it got worse. His life took a devastating turn when he lost everything. He got evicted from his home because he couldn't pay the rent. With no money and nowhere to go, Ernest moved in with his sister. Despite his struggles, she welcomed him in and supported him. It was at this low point that Ernest knew he had to change. He realized he needed to get clean. Turning back to his Muslim roots, Ernest began praying for help. He was desperate. He got down on his knees and prayed, asking for a way out of the addiction. He told God that he still wanted to feel high, but he knew he would die if he didn't get help.
I had become Muslim in 1977, which didn't help with my Jewish producers or my Christian castmates.
Ernest prayed, asking for a miracle to take away the drugs, and that's exactly what happened. He says that 30 years later, he hasn't looked back since. For Ernest, it was his faith in Jesus, Christ, that helped him overcome his addiction. He also admires people in recovery programs, like Alcoholics Anonymous, AA. But for him, his faith was the key to his recovery. After being away from TV and film for 6 years, Ernest made his return to acting. He reprised his role as Roger Raj Thomas in the sequel, What's Happening Now?, showing that with the right help, it's possible to overcome the toughest challenges. In a spin-off show, Raj became a more grown-up character. He even had a wife, played by Amory Johnson, and was doing well as a writer. The show was on air for 3 years before it ended. After that, Ernest Thomas, who played Raj, appeared on many other shows like The Parenthood, Martin, Soul Food, The Steve Harvey Show, and Just Jordan. Like many celebrities, Ernest had some drama with others in the entertainment world. In an interview, he was asked about working with Bill Cosby. Ernest said that while he admired Cosby's talent, he didn't like him as a person. He described Bill Cosby as snobbish, unfriendly, and arrogant. He said Cosby wasn't nice to him or his What's Happening co-stars Fred Berry and Haywood Nelson. Ernest even shared that he once cried when he went to prison, but that he still wanted to be honest about his feelings. Ernest also made some surprising claims about working with Martin Lawrence. He talked about Martin's start on What's Happening and shared some interesting stories about their time together. These stories gave fans a peek behind the scenes of life on TV shows and the relationships between the actors.
He said, "So what's your Muslim name?" I said, Luqman Muhammad Al-Ghazali. He went, "Yeah, that's deep."
One of the most unforgettable moments in his life was meeting the legendary boxer Muhammad Ali. The way it happened was both unexpected and inspiring. Ernest shares that he was going through a tough time when he first thought about meeting Ali. He was hanging out with the wrong crowd, including a drug dealer. One day, the dealer told Ernest, "You should meet Muhammad Ali. I bet he'd like you." That suggestion stuck with Ernest, and he decided to focus on making it happen. To prepare, Ernest started visualizing meeting Ali. He prayed about it and filled his room with Ali's photos and magazine articles. 2 weeks later, something incredible happened. A woman told him that Ali was at a magic shop in Hollywood. Even though the shop looked closed, the door was unlocked. Encouraged by his faith, Ernest walked in. Inside, Ali was performing magic tricks. People were excited to see Ernest too, recognizing him from TV. But Ernest was there for Allie. When they finally met, Allie gave him a powerful look, one that Ernest says could make anyone feel small. Allie didn't need to say much to make an impression. Ernest remembers saying, "Hey, no more autographs. I'm here for Allie." But Allie was gracious, and they got along well. Allie even asked Ernest to do his famous laugh from What's Happening, the kind of laugh that doesn't make any sound, but says everything. Allie admitted he loved the show, and Ernest was thrilled.
And I said, "You don't watch What's Happening?" He said, "Yeah, I watch the show. I love that show." So who would think that Muhammad Ali watched What's Happening?
That meeting left a big impression on Ernest. It wasn't just about meeting a celebrity. It was about the power of faith, prayer, and believing in your dreams. He often talks about how important it is to visualize what you want and work towards it. Ernest Thomas talked about how the show changed things for the better. Ernest said in an interview with Today, "It was definitely a positive thing because there were not a lot of Black people on TV back then. Even though shows like Good Times, The Jeffersons, and Sanford and Son were already on the air, Thomas pointed out that those shows didn't focus on Black teenagers. What's Happening was different because it showed the everyday lives of 3 Black teens, and this was something new. According to Thomas, people of all races, not just Black viewers, could connect with the friendships on the show. But the show did more than just entertain. It also helped with race relations, even with people who had racist attitudes. Thomas explained that over the years, he met many white people who told him they had grown up in racist homes but ended up watching What's Happening by accident. Once they started watching, they couldn't help but laugh and enjoy the show. It chipped away the racism, Thomas said. He believes the show made people see Black characters in a different, more positive light. The series wasn't a huge rating success, but the chemistry among the cast members was strong. Thomas thinks that the show paved the way for other Black-led comedies that came out in the 1980s, like The Cosby Show and 227. "Oh, absolutely, absolutely," he said confidently. Thomas believed the show had more life in it and could have continued for a longer time, but those behind-the-scenes issues cut it short.
Top of the line, made of mahogany, has silk lining.
After What's Happening and its sequel, What's Happening Now, ended in 1988, Ernest stayed busy. He played Mr. Omar on Everybody Hates Chris and had roles in movies like Spike Lee's Malcolm X, Judd Apatow's Funny People, and Rob Zombie's The Lords of Salem. But even with his impressive career, fans still recognize him as Raj. Ernest finds it amusing. "I could grow a beard, wear a hat, and people still know it's me," he said. Once he was wearing a hoodie and someone called out, "Raj!" When he turned around, they explained, "I recognized your walk." He even joked that his backside must be famous too. He reflected on his time working on Everybody Hates Chris and how it opened the door to roles like the principal in the movie Funny People with Adam Sandler. "Adam is one of the nicest guys ever," Ernest said. That role added another highlight to his long career, which spans decades. Ernest once tried out for a role in the famous series Roots, hoping to play the character Kunta Kinte. He made it to the final 2, but the role went to LeVar Burton. Despite this, Ernest's screen test was so good that they created a role for him in the show. He played a character in a scene about manhood training. Even though he didn't get the role he wanted, he was still part of something big. He also talked about how Roots was important because before that, stories about Black history were hardly ever told. It showed the painful history of slavery, which was often ignored. Ernest shared that even though Roots was a huge success, he couldn't watch it. It was too hard for him, and he's never watched it since. His brother also came out as gay and later as transgender, something that surprised Ernest at first, but he loved his brother no matter what. Ernest is now 75 years old, and he's amazed at how he's still healthy after battling drug addiction for 20 years earlier in his life. "I wonder what I'd look like if I hadn't done drugs. Maybe I'd still look 40, he joked. Despite the rough patches, he's grateful to have survived when so many others didn't. "I lost a lot of people I loved during those times, but I thank God I made it through. Ernest believes that faith, hard work, and staying positive are the keys to success. He once shared his formula for achieving greatness. Have faith in God and yourself. Stay focused on your goals. Remove negativity, even if it's from friends or family, but do it kindly. Work like there's no tomorrow, and always speak greatness into your life. Ernest was deeply moved by how much love the hip-hop community has shown him over the years. He admitted he didn't expect younger generations to embrace what's happening the way they have. But then he met Tupac Shakur, who surprised him with a big bear hug and heartfelt thanks for the laughter the show brought him. Ernest said Tupac's appreciation was a powerful moment. He also received love from other hip-hop legends like Method Man, Redman, Queen Latifah, and MC Lyte. Even Will Smith introduced Ernest to his son Jaden, saying, "This is the guy I watched every week growing up." Ernest shared that he continues to work in Hollywood and recently starred in a film called The Playhouse, which premiered in April. Despite the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, Ernest has stayed active and healthy. He explained his decision not to take the COVID vaccine, saying he prefers to protect himself in other ways. Ernest hasn't taken vaccines since a bad reaction to the flu shot in 1996. However, he made it clear he doesn't judge anyone who chooses to take them. He also reflected on his lifelong habits of staying cautious, even before masks were common. He mentioned how frustrated he used to feel when people sneezed openly without covering their mouths, saying it's still not an effective way to stop germs from spreading. When it comes to his personal life, Ernest is private. He has joked about having a love child, but he doesn't have any children. He's been engaged several times, but none of the relationships worked out. Rumor has it he might have been married once for just 2 months before they realized it wasn't a good match. As of today, Ernest's net worth was estimated to be over $500,000. While he's not a billionaire, he's made a name for himself in Hollywood and remains a beloved figure in TV history.